Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Fireside Chat, What It Means to Be Immune. I'm Dr. Wayne Teris, Care Compass Network's Chief Medical Officer, and I will be moderating today's session. Care Compass Network is a not-for-profit, community-led organization. While we do not provide direct patient care, we do specialize in supporting the development of high-quality care that results in better health and well-being for community residents. In our effort to support the development of high-quality integrated networks of care, we work with over 160 healthcare and non-healthcare community agencies throughout a 9-county region of the southern tier of New York. These include hospital systems, community-based organizations, skilled nursing facilities, behavioral health and substance use disorder programs, social services agencies, higher education institutions, and very importantly, community members like you. We felt it was important to address questions and concerns that have been submitted by community members regarding COVID-19 vaccines and immunity, and today's chat will feature panelists from our West region, which includes Chemung and Steuben counties. So let's meet today's panelists. Dr. Saba Ahmed is currently working as a primary care physician at Guthrie's Corning Centerway and is actively taking new patients. She graduated from Nishtar Medical College in Pakistan, where she then practiced both primary care and obstetrics. She did her internal medicine residency at Staten Island University Hospital in Staten Island, New York. Dr. Ahmed experienced the peak of the COVID pandemic in New York City and in fact, suffered herself with COVID when she was 10 weeks pregnant. Her areas of interest in medicine are preventive medicine and gastroenterology. She's also a mother and a homemaker, so her hobbies and interests mostly revolve around spending quality time with her 2 daughters. Next, Cheryl Henninger, BHA RRT, is the Director of Operations at Gerould's Healthcare Center, Community Care's Health Solution, a division of Gerould's Professional Pharmacy Incorporated. Gerould's has supported our community for 100 years and has developed into more than just a pharmacy and a medical equipment company by specializing in community-based services and initiatives to improve community health outcomes. Gerould's currently provides a variety of services throughout 18 counties in New York and 8 counties in Pennsylvania. As an essential provider, Cheryl coordinated Gerould's COVID response initiatives at the start of the pandemic to meet the needs of the community, minimizing added exposure and risk. Cheryl also coordinated the immunization process when the COVID vaccines became available to pharmacies in New York State. She continues to work within the communities to improve health outcomes through collaborations, holistic assessments, education, and engagement. Cheryl is a known speaker in the home care industry and frequently presents at different state and national conferences. In her spare time, Cheryl enjoys spending time with her family, running, biking, and traveling. Next, Dr. Russ Woglum, who graduated from Colgate University with a BA in biology and then went to medical school at the University of Massachusetts. He completed his residency in internal medicine at the Medical Center of Delaware and joined the Guthrie Clinic in Corning in 1987. While still practicing internal medicine, he has served many leadership roles, including the Corning Regional Medical Director, Chief Medical Officer of Corning Hospital, and Medical Director of Founders Pavilion. During his 23-year tenure as the Corning Regional Medical Director, he was intimately involved in the planning and design of the new Guthrie Corning Hospital and helped the clinic grow in Corning from about 30 Guthrie providers to more than 110 men and women that provide care for the community. He's been a member of the Corning Hospital Board of Directors and trustee for the Guthrie Clinic for close to 20 years. Currently, he serves as the Chief Medical Officer for Clinical Transformation and Ambulatory Quality and is also physician liaison for the Guthrie Clinic in their relationship with the Mayo Clinic Care Network. He has also served many roles in Care Compass Network Medicaid redesign projects, including the Clinical Governance Committee and the Primary Care Council. He's married to his very special wife, Debbie, with 5 grown children, and unfortunately is an avid Boston sports fan, having grown up in the suburbs of Boston. He comments that it's very difficult to live in the southern tier and root for the Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics, and Bruins. When not working or spending time with his family, he can be found at the golf course trying to figure out why golf is so difficult. So with that, we've met our panelists. Let's move on to the panel discussion. During this discussion, we'll be answering a number of questions submitted by members of the community. In addition, attendees may submit questions in the Q&A on the Zoom webinar or in the comments on the Facebook live feed, and we will do our best to address these questions as time permits. So we'll first move on to Dr. Ahmed, and a question we hear all the time is, were the vaccines rushed? How long were they tested? I know a lot of people have some difficulty with this, so if you can address that, that'd be great, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank Dr. Wen. I will consider myself successful, and I would sleep better if I would be able to convince one person to receive vaccine today. And this is something I've been trying. I try to talk to every patient I see about vaccine. What are they concerned? So you asked me that, are they rushed and how long they were tested? I will not say so. So I would say the process was expedited because the need for this vaccine. We were in a pandemic, we suffered traumatically. So as the genetic information about SARS-CoV-2 was received in January of 2020, the manufacturers of the vaccine and the scientists, they start working on them, they start the clinical trials. And by July and August, we have data from phase 1 and phase 2 trial. And by December, we were having results which were very promising with up to 94% efficacy of Pfizer and Moderna vaccine in December. And they were able to get approval in December, and we have been vaccinated since then. So it's not rushed. They were studied in a quality way. There were no compromise in any clinical trials, and all the scientists and the manufacturer, they did all research they could, like in a routine vaccination. There were literally no concern. It was not rushed. It was just expedited and prioritized because our community needed. So I hope I answered the question.
You did, and that's important information. And I guess it brings up sort of a corollary to that. People are concerned because they say it's experimental. They only have emergency use authorization and not full approval. So can you comment a little bit on what does emergency use authorization mean versus full approval?
So the emergency use authorization is basically just a mechanism to facilitate the availability and use of medical countermeasures, include medicine, include vaccines. It could be a bioterrorism. It could be any chemical component. It's a pandemic where we use. So basically we use our resources like the way we did during the COVID pandemic to streamline. It does not affect the vaccine safety because it does not impact the development. They are research going on like a proper way with any vaccine, clinical studies, they study the side effects, they just speed up the manufacturing and administrative process. So what happened with EUA is they are doing the pre-biological studies, they do the clinical trials, both phase 1 and 2 together to speed up the procedure. They start doing the manufacture along with clinical trial phase 3, and they asked while they are manufacturing the vaccine for emergency use authorization. FDA have no basically impact on any of this. They were given the data, they studied the efficacy, they studied the safety, and they give the approval. They just shortened the period of manufacturing and administrative process. So in a routine way, there is nothing like full approval. In a routine way, it takes sometimes years to develop a vaccine, 5 to 10 years to develop a vaccine. So the manufacturers, the pharmaceutical companies, don't start manufacturing the vaccine unless they have an approval after clinical trials from FDA. Then they start the process of manufacturing. It takes time and years. They apply for licensure, where we call it BLA. So EUA is an emergency use authorization, but there is literally zero impact on quality of any clinical trial, any safety, The clinical data we received, nothing, zero whatsoever. And we never stop doing post-marketing surveillance. We keep that up. So there is nothing full approval. There is no difference. Basically, it's just minimizing and speeding up the manufacturing and administrative process. So I hope I answered the question. And I found it literally very concerning when I hear the word full approval. There is nothing like full approval.
So yes, and they're not experimental, and we've
Not at
determined
all.
and we've determined that they've been approved properly. So I'll move on to Dr. Woglum. Given what we just determined, are there any reasons somebody should not get the vaccine?
Yeah, it's a great question, Wayne, because there are so many rumors that there are reasons. In reality, there are some people who have high risks of severe allergic reactions to vaccines. In my own experience, we've had most of those people get the vaccine. Some have been afraid, and we haven't had, in my practice, anybody who's had allergic reactions have a problem. There's always concern, but every place giving vaccines is prepared if you had an allergic reaction with EpiPens. You know, those are shots of adrenaline. In reality, the only real reasons not to get it is if you're allergic to the first vaccine. Let's say you got Pfizer and Moderna, and you had a severe allergic reaction, not a red arm, not pain, not fever, but truly a life-threatening allergic reaction. Those people shouldn't get a second one. Or if you're allergic to the ingredients, the messenger RNA viruses, Pfizer and Moderna, have something in them called polyethylene glycol. It's the substance in the laxative Miralax that a lot of people may be familiar with. If you've had an allergic reaction to it, you shouldn't get the Moderna or Pfizer, but you would be okay to get Johnson & Johnson. Likewise, the Johnson & Johnson one and done vaccine has something in it called polysorbate. If you've had an allergic reaction to it, you shouldn't get it again. But then if you had an allergic reaction to Johnson & Johnson, it's one and done, so you're immunized anyhow. And then lastly, one of the concerns is people who are taking drugs that modify their immune system. There are some serious medical conditions. It's not a reason that you can't get the vaccine if you're taking meds that modify your immune system, such as chemotherapies. But we're just not 100% sure of how effective the vaccine will be if we're giving you ongoing treatments. You know, we'd prefer to be 2 weeks after your last treatment before you got the vaccine. But it's really difficult sometimes if you're facing, you know, a serious life-threatening illness to hold up your treatments. So we're recommending go ahead and get them because you do not want to get COVID while you're undergoing these treatments. But we're still trying to learn more about how effective they are when given to people undergoing treatment. It's a discussion to have with your treating doctor, but it's right now, I'd say the overwhelming evidence would be in favor of getting them.
And you know, you talk about immune system and immunity, and along those lines, we get a lot of questions. You know, what exactly is immunity? And two questions come to mind from that. Do I need the vaccine if I've already recovered from COVID? And conversely, people have said, you know, I heard some people that have been vaccinated still got COVID. I mean, how can that happen? And, you know, why should I get vaccinated if I can still get COVID? So if you can speak to that, that would be great.
So I'll try briefly just to talk about immunity. We're all familiar with it. Most people have been getting immunizations most of their life since they were children. You know, measles, mumps, and rubella, diphtheria, tetanus. You know, it's been flu shots every year. It's just that you give your body an exposure to something. And then in reaction to it, your body builds antibodies to it, but they also build memory that they recognize that. And so it's like priming the pump. If you are exposed to an infection and you've been given a vaccine that exposes you to that infection, your body's ready and willing to react to prevent you from becoming sick. For people who've had COVID, there's been a lot of talk, well, I don't need it because I had it. It was mild, it was easy. We've learned a lot about that. In fact, unfortunately, people who had really mild symptoms, mild meaning you weren't admitted to the hospital generally, or you weren't on supplemental oxygen, or you weren't bordering on being in the hospital for a while. We've learned that those patients don't really build up much lasting immunity. It's a little puzzling to us. And we've also learned if those people who've gotten COVID get the vaccine, they have a dramatic response to it. So anybody who's had it, there's no delay time once your quarantine is up. Originally, when the vaccines were so short, we were telling people to wait 90 days. Now, unless you were in the hospital and you were given antibodies as part of your treatment, we encourage you to get the vaccine as soon as your quarantine is over. But those people, especially, we have more data on Pfizer and Moderna. The people who've gotten COVID, who then went on to get Moderna and Pfizer, have just tremendous antibody responses. We're not even sure at this point whether they'll ever need a booster. I think that if you've been vaccinated, it's not that you can't get COVID. Now, when we say vaccinated, it means it's 2 weeks after your last vaccine. If you got vaccinated today, sort of one of the professional golfers got exposed, got vaccinated, first dose, and came down with COVID a few days later, that's not a vaccine failure. You have to, if it's Johnson & Johnson, 2 weeks after your vaccine, if it's Moderna and Pfizer, 2 weeks after the second vaccine, there is a chance you're going to get sick. There is a chance. It's low. We're exposed to so many different variants now. We don't know what the chances are, but you're probably somewhere between 80 and 90% protected. But typically, once you've gotten the vaccine, if you get COVID, the chances of you dying from COVID are really, really, really small. In fact, I looked at the data in preparation for the talk today. People who've been vaccinated fully have 6 millionths of a percent chance of dying from COVID. So when you hear just about everyone right now who's dying from COVID are people who have not been vaccinated. So you can get it, but it tends to be really mild. And the purpose of getting the vaccine is so that you don't get the illness, you don't expose everybody else, you don't take a chance to get the rest of your family or coworkers or neighbors infected, and you avoid most of the long-term complications from COVID that we're beginning to see.
That's great. And also, the more people that don't get the vaccine means, the variants now will be prevalent, and the more people that have infections, of course, the more chance there is for other variants to be to generate. So it's very important moving forward as well. So thank you for those great answers.
Especially a lot of young people seem to be more resistant to the notion, thinking because they're young, that their chances are less. Certainly they are statistically less that they're going to die, but hopefully we'll touch upon a little bit later. Young people really do not want to get COVID either. So we'll come back to that, I think, a little bit later.
Yes, for sure. Cheryl, I'd like to move on to you to discuss some community issues. You know, vaccine rates seem so low in just certain areas and certain pockets. And could you speak to issues of access and barriers in the community? And, you know, just some examples are, what does somebody do if they're homebound, or if they're not homebound, but they don't have transportation to get to the vaccine? So would you be able to speak to that?
Sure, I'd be happy to try to speak to that. You're right, there are some pockets across the nation where the vaccine rate is extremely low, particularly in the South. I think, again, I was doing a little research earlier too to make sure I was up to date with some statistics, and it looks like Mississippi has the lowest vaccine rate at about 46%, and the southern states overall are averaging about 60%. The two main reasons, one, access, and one is patient choice. So those are really the two contributing factors as to why people choose to not get a vaccine or cannot get a vaccine. So patient choice just is education, getting the word out, such as events like this, talking with providers to get education out into those communities to hopefully reduce the risk of the Delta variants increasing. Probably the bigger barrier is access. You know, we've got a lot of rural areas across the United States, a lot of rural areas right here in our own communities, in which people just really don't have the transportation means to be able to get out to get the vaccine. You know, patients have major disabilities, they don't own a car, they're not close to others. Dr. Woglum mentioned, you know, the Amish communities. You know, access is definitely an issue. There's been a lot of discussion in New York State and in our regions surrounding access to the vaccine. There are some programs in different areas where there are some vaccine campaigns going on. They're trying to do them more locally in several different communities so that at least it's people don't have to travel so far to get the vaccine. There are a few organizations throughout different regions that are also going in the home and providing vaccines. It's challenging because once you open the vial of the vaccine, you have about 6 hours to use it up. So, you know, when you're talking about travel time, there's 10 doses in a vial for the most part. You know, it's really hard within a 6-hour period to dispense the vaccine, monitor the patient appropriately, and then travel to the next location. So there are some issues in getting that out there, but there are some organizations that are really working toward trying to help bridge that gap. And the best way to find out as far as if you're needing help accessing a vaccine, one is finding out where those locations are. The best resource is through the local public health department. You can also contact you know, your providers, your physician offices, your local healthcare centers, and reaching out to your local pharmacies also, remembering that those are also resources. And a lot of pharmacies, not only in New York State, but across the whole nation, are certified to do immunizations and are giving immunizations. I can speak on behalf of Gerould's that we went from scheduling, rigid scheduling through an online registration because of the influx in the very beginning to where we've just now opened up to provide walk-in access. So you can walk into one of our 4 pharmacy locations and get the Moderna vaccine. And you'll find most of the pharmacies are carrying Moderna and distribute Moderna just because it's easier for us to store. It doesn't require, you know, the refrigeration units that Pfizer does. There are some pharmacies that are offering the Johnson & Johnson also. So there are a lot of resources that are available. So, you know, access your doctor's office, access your public health department, and access your pharmacies. Those are really great resources to find out how you can get that.
One other question that sometimes comes up is, you know, there was a lot of angst about signing up online, and some people said, I don't know how to sign up online. You know, what do I do? Who do I call? Do you have any advice for those folks?
Sure. And we ran into that too. I can talk from experience. So, when we got approved to be an immunizer for the Moderna vaccine, the phones rang off the hook. We couldn't answer the phone calls, and we didn't even have a process in place, because as soon as it was announced, we started getting phone calls immediately. So, we were trying to figure out a way to still take care of our pharmacy needs, our patients with medical equipment needs, and all of our other programs, and handle those phone calls and those conversations to keep those things flowing, but also figure out a way to properly distribute the Moderna vaccines. So while we still tried to accept the vaccines, we did have to reroute the phone system and try to reroute it to a couple phone lines. Those phone lines couldn't handle all the calls. I mean, within 3 days, we had 16,000 people that were leaving messages, and we immediately worked with our website people to implement an online registration, and changed our phone system to say, please go to this website, please sign up. And then we pulled together a team that could watch the website and work with each of the locations as far as the doses that they were getting every week, so that we could pull from a first come first serve basis and schedule them appropriately in one of our 4 locations. So it was pretty chaotic in the beginning, and then we kind of got a system in place. And then as the vaccine access opened up more so, then the wait list went down. Then we were reaching out to people on the wait list and having them tell us, oh, thanks, but I already got my vaccine. I'm already set. I was able to get it at one of the clinics or one of the big community-based events, which is fantastic. So it's unique to see how January, February, it was very chaotic, and you felt like you couldn't meet the needs of the community as fast as you tried. And now here we are offering, hey, you don't even have to register anymore. You can walk in and we can give you the vaccine at any time you need it. So it's nice. It's a good, it shows you how far we've come. But I think, as your original question about registering and if it's difficult online, I think most of the immunization locations have gotten past that, to where there is a lot of walk-in access for people to just give a quick call. Hey, can I stop by? Most of the time you're going to get a yes, stop in and we can do it today.
Thanks, Cheryl. I'll go back to Dr. Ahmed. And we've had a lot of questions about, what exactly is in these vaccines and how do they work, and can they give me COVID? And some have asked, well, isn't it just the same thing as the flu vaccine? So could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So far we have 2 kinds of COVID vaccine. Moderna and Pfizer have same mechanism of action. They are messenger RNA. I would like to tell you guys what is that. And then the other one is Johnson & Johnson, which is a double-stranded DNA. So what is the difference between 2 and how they work? The Moderna and Pfizer vaccine, basically, they have this material called messenger RNA, which is responsible for making proteins in our body. They are just in a very small droplet of fat to carry this messenger RNA to our body. When it go into our body, it produce a spike protein, which is similar to the protein, actually exactly the same protein in the COVID virus. And they make that protein, so our body started to have an immune response. They produce antibodies, and few of those memory B cells, which are basically responsible for keeping the memory, they just kind of get stored in the lymph nodes. So whenever they have an actual infection with the COVID virus, they know that, oh, we have seen this one before, so let's fight it. So they fight better. With the double-stranded DNA virus, the Johnson & Johnson, it's just actually a genetically made, a lab-made small virus. It's just like a cab or a taxi, which is carrying the double-stranded DNA to our body. When it go to our body, it do the same job. It produce the small spike protein, which is in the envelope of COVID virus, and then it do the same thing. It go stimulate the B cells, T cells, produce antibodies, which is responsible for giving us immunity. Then the memory cells is gonna go back in the lymph nodes, and whenever you guys, unfortunately, or God forbid, have an infection, it's gonna recognize it and it will fight with it because it has done this job previously too. It's different than flu. Flu is different. It is a dead virus basically, but job is same. It's going to produce antibodies. Just the mechanism is different. Can it give us COVID? No way. It is not a virus. It's just a small, tiny protein. So far, we have no data supporting that these vaccines, Moderna, Pfizer, or Johnson & Johnson, can actually give us COVID. So I hope I'm able to explain a little what, in a layman terminology, what is messenger RNA, what is DNA, what is immunity. It cannot, of course, cannot give us COVID infection or pneumonia.
And it can't give us a positive COVID test either.
It can. It cannot. It cannot give us that.
Important.
Yeah.
Others have asked about the longer term safety of the vaccine, and they're concerned. Can you speak to that? Can you address the concerns that people say, I really worry about the long-term safety because these just haven't been around that long?
Exactly. So when I was doing some research, so I can talk to you guys better. So these vaccines, especially the messenger RNA, which is Pfizer and Moderna, their biggest issue was they are very unstable because of this particle messenger RNA. So that's why we have to store that in such a low temperature. When they go into your body, they immediately produce response. If they have to give you a side effect, it's going to be immediate. So far, with COVID vaccine, Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson, and whatever we have in the past, all the vaccines, we don't know any vaccine causing any long-term effect after 6 weeks. So basically, after 6 weeks, it is super unlikely for any side effect or long-term effect from any vaccine to happen. So if I'm getting a vaccine, I could have a little bit of maybe sore arm, and I could have a little bit of body aches or fever, some enlarged lymph nodes, maybe tiredness, fatigue, but nothing major, basically nothing major. Long-term effect, so these are unstable particles. They either produce the response immediately. Double-stranded DNA, the Johnson & Johnson is a little, have later effect in a few weeks, but all these vaccines so far, which we have that in the world, we are using in the United States, after 6 weeks, we have not noticed any side effects, no long-term effect. Even with the, we had concern of GBS with influenza virus, with the flu virus vaccine, nothing after 6 weeks. So 6 weeks is a kind of cutoff. We are seeing pericarditis, inflammation, 4 days. Blood clot, nothing after 4 weeks. So basically 6 weeks is a cutoff. It's going to be very unlikely. And of course, we are doing the post-marketing surveillance in case if there are any side effects, but nothing after 6 weeks. They are not made like that. It's not going to happen.
So Dr. Woglum, there's another concern that people have expressed, and they want to know, how long does the protection last from the vaccine? And are they going to need a booster? Do we have data on that yet?
Yeah, I think the beauty of the study participants is we continue to generate data from them and track people's body response to the vaccines. So far, the immunity from all three seems to last quite a while. We don't know, and we won't know, but we're continuing to study how long that will last. It is possible that we could need a booster, but if we needed a booster, it also might target what I would say maybe an epsilon or some other future variant if something came along that would make it more effective. But right now, there's been no formal announcement that we would need boosters. And so I tell all my patients, let's wait and see. If we need a booster, sign me up. But for now, as long as we get the full series of vaccines, it's to be determined.
And we actually have a live question here from one of the viewers, and they're asking, is the J&J vaccine safe? The Johnson & Johnson, they heard it can cause blood clots. And, you know, there have also been questions about, as Dr. Ahmed mentioned, heart issues, pericarditis. So could you speak to those two things?
Sure. Let's talk first about the Johnson & Johnson and the blood clots. There were 6 cases seen in the first 6.8 million doses. It's a very unique issue with blood clots. It's unique because if you look at their blood test, their blood clotting cells called platelets tend to run low. It's a very unique thing. There are other examples of it in healthcare. But 6 cases in 6.8 million doses caused us to pause for a minute. When people say to me, well, I think it's rushed and I think they're just forging ahead, the chances that you would be hit by lightning are greater than you would have had a stroke from the Johnson & Johnson virus. Yet, to make sure we're being safe, they took a time out and then said, clearly the evidence says the chances are low and the greater good of protecting people from COVID far, far, far outweighed the risk. Better said, more people die from allergic reactions to penicillin than they do get strokes from the COVID virus vaccine. And we don't take penicillin off the market or sulfa drugs because there were allergic reactions and people died. In terms of the newest thing, which is the vaccine giving this myocarditis or inflammation around the heart, there is some data that younger people are more vulnerable to it. The numbers are still extraordinarily low. But there are people who get chest pain, shortness of breath, and some, fleeting fast heart rates associated with this inflammation around the heart and the lining of the heart. But I've also tried to remind people that COVID virus, if you're young and you're worried, am I going to get inflammation of the heart from the vaccine? I don't want it. The actual virus itself has greater risks, more serious risks of heart damage than what we're seeing with the vaccine. Irritation around the lining of the heart is very treatable and it's going to go away and heal. Some of the damage from some of the athletes in particular, that would be, in my mind, when you compare one to the other, a reason that would still say get the vaccine versus take the risk of the vaccine. You do not want to get COVID infection. There are so many things that can go wrong, especially with this Delta variant. It's incredibly contagious. And there are longer term complications of COVID. If you're 20 years old and you get COVID, chances are really good you're going to live. But there are other complications called long COVID you really want to avoid. So do not be afraid of the vaccines. It's not to say nothing can ever happen, but the odds are overwhelmingly in your favor that you'll do well.
Thank you. Cheryl, back to issues in the community. Can you speak to the vaccine administration process in general? People have said, wait a minute, this is supposed to be free. Why are they asking for insurance information? What about all this paperwork? How do I get a vaccine card if I don't go to one of those big tents that the state had put up? Can you address that for me?
Yeah, I sure can. So yes, the vaccine is free. There is no charge to get the vaccine. However, for organizations who are providing the vaccine to get some reimbursement for the administration fee, your insurance information is required because insurance will cover it. It will cover the administration of the vaccine. The vaccine itself is free. So there is no out-of-pocket expense for anybody who wants the vaccine. The reason for all of the paperwork is one, for reimbursement. Second, again, I know us as a pharmacy immunizer, we have to report to the state. So we have to report all doses, the lot number on every vial that's opened, who gets that. So we have to report all of this to the state. And again, we're also screening for potential side effects. So we have a bunch of screening questions that we ask prior to receiving the vaccine. And then once it's administered, we require that people sit at one of our locations for about 15 minutes just to make sure that there's no major side effects. We've been very fortunate, haven't had any issues at all, knock on wood. As Dr. Woglum and Dr. Ahmed stated, it's very, very, very rare. So it is a very easy process. It's a little time consuming because there's a little bit of paperwork. Some of the paperwork has to be repeated for the second dose if you're getting Moderna or Pfizer, just because it's another dose. So again, it's the same reporting procedures. It's the same claim submission procedure. And again, they want to just verify that there's no risks that could be associated, that maybe we want to push you back to your doctor to talk to before you receive the vaccine. In regards to the card, as an immunizer, we're required to give the card. So we provide the card with the first dose. We ask people to keep their card with them and bring it back. If they forget, which sometimes happens, there are ways around that, and we can go back into our records and redo a card for them, but we have to sign off on it and stamp it. So that's how they get their card. They don't have to go to any particular place to receive a card. You basically should get the card wherever you get your vaccine.
And some people have asked, they've said, I don't have a primary doctor. Where do I find out about the vaccine? Of course, my first advice would be, you really, really should have a primary doctor. But if they don't at the moment, where can they learn more about the vaccine and get information that's factual and evidence-based?
Yeah. So evidence-based information, again, I like to steer people toward their local public health department because they have a good finger on what's going on locally. They also are up to date on a daily basis with the CDC and what's going on within the state, as well as at a national level. So the public health department is always a great resource. I agree, Dr. Teris, that everybody should have a primary care physician or provider's office that they can connect with. But if they don't, there are a lot of community-based resources as well too. I mentioned before, your local pharmacies, all of your pharmacists are educated and pharmacy staff are educated for the community and are a great resource for everyone in the community. So even if they don't have an answer, they certainly can tap into resources and further information for you, but there's a lot of resources from your pharmacies. I'm also going to say Care Compass Network, because, Care Compass Network does an awesome job trying to coordinate and bring services to the community and identify where there are gaps and barriers and identify partners who can really help meet those gaps and barriers. So I'm gonna put a pitch out for Care Compass Network also.
Much appreciated. We try. Dr. Ahmed, I think we alluded to this a little before. We've talked about long-term effects being highly unlikely, but some people are afraid to get the vaccine because of potential side effects that they've heard about anecdotally. And, some people have gone to get the first vaccine in the 2 vaccine series, and then they have a side effect and don't go back for the second shot. So can you talk about the side effects and, how important it really is to complete the series once you start it?
Exactly. So as I was talking before, the most common side effects are very minor and very well tolerable, just like any other vaccine. So at the site of infection. You could have a little bit of swelling, redness, some tenderness. You could have a sore arm, sometimes a swollen lymph node at that side, a little bit of low-grade fever, fatigue. These are the common side effects we are having. So me, myself, I have COVID. I have COVID vaccine. This is what I did. I took Tylenol, ibuprofen, and I survived. And they are very less serious side effects, as we spoke about myocarditis, pericarditis, we spoke about blood clots, so rare, and the risk from COVID, all these benefits from the vaccination outweighs everything. So even there are side effects, very, very rare. Benefits are much, much, much more than anybody can imagine. So they should not be halted. So most of the side effects are not after first vaccine. They're more likely you're going to have it after second one, which is good that you're going to get the second. And I would not advise anybody not to get the second one unless you have an anaphylactic reaction and you end up having epinephrine, antihistamine, stuff like that. Otherwise, I would never advise anybody not to get vaccine unless there's a concern about anaphylaxis.
Exactly. And, one other thing, you go on social media and there are those that say, there's something called the VAERS reporting system, the CDC vaccine adverse event reporting system. And they'll say, just look at that. All these people having all these different adverse effects from the vaccine, they're lying to us. They're not telling us the truth. Can you speak to what is the VAERS system and why do we see this multiplicity of things there that
yes, exactly.
aren't being reported, supposedly?
Yes, exactly. So it's a vaccine adverse event reporting system. A part of it is mandatory, a part of it is volunteer. So basically anyone can go there and report. A patient can go there, parents of the children can go there and report that. Physicians are sometimes mandatory, they have to do the reporting, some symptoms are voluntary. So you're gonna see all kind of side effects. So there is very less likely that somebody's not gonna have a little bit of body aches, a little bit of tiredness. So you're gonna see all those side effects over there. And basically it's open. Anybody can go there and fill an online application. Where did I receive the vaccine? Who gave me vaccine? What symptoms I have, even if it's a mild, very mild headache. So that's why you are seeing all this data. So what I usually tell my patient, a medicine has an effect. That's why it can produce a side effect, because it's just an extension. The only things which don't have a side effect is placebo. So it's just, even water in excess have a side effect. So your vaccine is doing something. It's going inside your body, generating an immune response. And if you are a little bit of tired, little bit of fatigue, it means your body is actually fighting and doing the job it's supposed to do. So that's why you're seeing all kind of these, data over there, which is good. If there's concerning side effects, we would be able to do so.
And we did have actually a live question that came in. This is an interesting one. So they said they got the first shot in January, but never went back for the second dose. Can they still go for the second dose, or do they have to start all over again? And that's an interesting question. So I'll throw that out to anybody who cares to answer.
I actually did some reading about that in case it was asked. It's still recommended to get the second vaccine. Nobody studied if you're 6 months apart, but the recommendation would be to go ahead and get it as soon as you can. There's a chance, there's some studies in Europe, England as a country made their priority to get everybody a first shot. It meant that they didn't hold a second shot in reserve in England. So a lot of people got their second shot later. So we would tell you it makes sense to get it. You did prime your immune system with the first one, and then the second one is to bring it out further. Yeah, it may not, we don't know if it will work as well, but in theory, it should still be helpful. So I hope we can encourage you. It makes sense to get the second one. And there are people who've started with one vaccine and got the other one. No one knows any science behind it. In theory, if you got Moderna and then you got Johnson and Johnson, we don't know about what immune system things might happen, so no one recommends it. No one would say that would be best practice, but there have been people who've done that and have done well, but we don't have enough science behind it to say that would make good sense.
Thank you. So we have a number of other questions that have come through, and we're really just running up against the hour. But I'd like to wrap up with a couple of questions, and I'll start with the two physicians among the panelists. And have you had success discussing safety and efficacy with your patients, and what sort of messages have resonated? Do you have some insight?
Yes. So I'm a primary care doctor. My job is to prevent a lot of things. So this is my area of interest. I always speak about screening for the cancers. I always try my best to speak about vaccination. So especially in regard to COVID, I am able to have some success by sometimes sharing my own experience of having COVID and then having vaccination. And I was kind of able to convince a lot of my patients that they should receive vaccine, and they did. Yeah, so that was like a good, interesting contribution. I think I'm being able to talk to my patient, and they kind of resonated and they listened to me. There are most of them agreed, and they end up having vaccination. And so far, none of my patient has complained about all those side effects we talked about. Most of them just body ache, sore arms, so great fever. There are a few of them who has told me like, we don't have any problem whatsoever.
Yeah, Wayne, it's a great question. I would say, first of all, as primary care docs, we're guilty about caring. What I would say is I'd ask people what are their biggest worries about it, and then try to understand their worries. In the world we live in now, we just want to present facts. We don't want to present rumor, innuendo. But at the same time, people are hearing so many things. I can understand their fear and worries if what you're hearing repeatedly introduces doubt. We want people to see us as a place they can go where they trust the information we're going to give you is the best knowledge we have. And I think if we can engage in a discussion about what is it that frightens you, it gives us a chance to talk about, is there validity to it? And if so, what is it? And what's the opposite side? What if you don't get the vaccine? What can happen? And I think that it's a healthy discussion. And hopefully it seems to have helped some people change their minds and get it, feel more comfortable about it. But I want them to ask me about their concerns. I just want to answer them honestly because you care. And the reason you care so much is you've looked at that data. And, even Dr. Ahmed and Cheryl and myself and you, Dr. Teris, we had to decide, do we get it? Yes, I'm a doctor, but I'm also a son, a husband, a father, a grandfather. All of those relationships matter as well. For me to decide, I needed to be sure what I was doing was good for me too, because I'm a patient just like everybody else I take care of. And so I think that's the best way. Let's just talk about your misgivings or your worries or your fears. And then maybe we can come up with a better understanding so you can make your decision with the facts, not the rumor mill.
And that's a great point. And, in a recent survey, I think 96% of physicians have received the vaccine. And out of that other 4%, the majority are intending to finish their series or get it. And I think that speaks volumes because, as you said, we as physicians will research this. And I was vaccinated as well, of course. And I have one last question for all three of you, and I'll let you take turns. And this is important. How has COVID impacted your community and the patients and clients that you interact with? Do you have any quick insights for us?
Sure. Should I speak first? Okay. So as I was telling you before, that my job as a primary care doctor is to take care of the stuff even before it happened. What I've been noticing, our community has suffered through a lot. We are definitely was not seeing a lot of patients coming for their annual physical examination. They were missing on their vaccination. They were missing on their routine screenings for cancers like colonoscopies, mammograms, their pap smears, their CAT scan of the chest if they are smokers. So that was my concern, that we are missing a part and we are not doing or not able to provide what we actually meant to be. So I am so glad that our community is getting vaccinated. New York State is getting better in shape in regards to the vaccination rate, and we are seeing the patients back in our clinics. My second concern and my second issue was the psychiatric issues. We were seeing so much anxiety, depression, with the loneliness, with this disease, unknown enemy. We had that. We don't know what it's causing. We have social issues, we have economical issues. That was the biggest concern. Every patient who walk in our clinic, we talk about anxiety, depression, we screen them during COVID. It's literally to the sky, I would say that. So it definitely has impacted the community, and I cannot be happier more enough for all our community members who are getting vaccinated and they are going back to their routine. They are celebrating their birthdays. I just have a patient, 100-year-old, who just celebrated her birthday with all the grandkids, with all the children, and all of them were vaccinated, and she was so glad. I could not be more happier.
I'll just say quickly, it's been a very long haul since last winter. I lost 15 patients from COVID. I had a child and a grandchild who had it. I would not want to live through this again in my career. It's been a horrible toll for our community. And to Dr. Ahmed's point, anxiety, depression, isolation, I still think we're seeing it now. We all feel it ourselves, how hard it's been. It's been a really rough haul. I have hope if we can continue to get people to get their vaccines, that life can get back to some degree of normal. But I don't know that the new normal will be like the old normal. I don't know what will change or not change back, but it has been a hard time on our community. Yet I also see hope. I have a lot of hope that we're gonna get this to be a minor issue rather than what it has been a truly life-altering event as a doc.
And I'm going to echo what Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Woglum have stated. And, certainly all of us have had our lives changed. Our way of life has changed. Everything we do, what we think about has changed. Some good and some bad. Well, it's been an awful year or year and a half, as you said, Dr. Woglum. Some good things have come out of it too, as far as I think we've connected. Some of us have connected more closely with our family and friends. And sometimes you get so busy in the day-to-day life that you get wrapped up in it. And it takes something like this to make you realize what's really important in life. And, it's a lot of creativity has also come out of it, finding ways to still communicate with each other, engage with our patients, help our patients still get the treatment and care that they've needed throughout the barriers that were there. So, telehealth is really launched as another connection point. It has lingered for so long, kind of on the outskirts, that it's there. People have dabbled in and out, and wow, we all just, virtual visits, virtual meetings, access to people that you didn't have good access to before. Those are positive things that have come out of it. But I think, for all of us to just think a little bit differently, not take things for granted, and understand what risks are out there, and, you know, go on about our lives and our day-to-day businesses, thinking in a little different manner, and figuring out how we still stay connected and still improve our health outcomes together in more creative ways. We actually found that when we were holding in-person chronic disease management groups, when we switched to virtual and created those platforms, we have had better attendance from patients because they didn't have the transportation barriers. We still have some internet access and device access issues. Some people just don't have that access. And that's another barrier now to look into. But there's good and bad that has come out of it. So it's another step in life. But I'm happy that we're at where we are at, and hopeful is a great word, Dr. Woglum, hopeful.
Well, on that hopeful note, that will end our webinar for tonight. First of all, I'd like to thank all three panelists, just excellent insights. And I'd like to thank all the viewers out there. The final word is if you don't have a primary care, please get one, and rely on scientific sources of information. Rely on your pharmacist and your public health department and your primary care provider. And I hope tonight we've been able to allay some of the fears, and some of you that were thinking about getting the vaccine, maybe you'll go get it, or at least you go talk to your doctor, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, pharmacist about it. So good night, everybody. Have a great rest of the evening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.